So the other day I was walking to pick up some unhealthy snacks from the grocery store, aka Bulk Barn, and I noticed that they had
Ah.
these delightful little biddies in stock again, and I bought them. That quickly reminded me that it's Halloween and spooky season, and I should make a cool, spooky, some sort of diorama. I grabbed a handy cheese container from my charcuterie board the night before and got to trimming. This diorama will also need some really strategically placed spiky bits, so I cut down some toothpicks to size and will use them later. The fancy, beautiful corrugated paper also made a comeback, this time in blood red because it's Halloween, and I only needed a really small section because I'm trying to make a column, and I literally have zero skill with any sort of kind of carving. So I just glued some corrugated paper to a cylinder I made out of clay. After that was done, I glued the cheese container to the base and started looking for something to use as stone stairs. Hi. Hello. Excuse me. Excuse me. Can I need that. I need it. Merry Christmas, everyone. It seems to be generally agreed by a lot of other hobbyists that corkboard works really, really well as natural stone. I hope no one in my family ever finds my YouTube channel because I actually won this corkboard from a family Christmas party. And let me tell you, the contest for this corkboard was fierce and bloody. But at the end of the day, I reign supreme. Sorry, Grandma. I did a little testy poo to make sure that the steps fit nicely, and then just started beating the crap out of them. And this was way harder than I thought it would be because I wanted the steps to look naturally weathered, but I don't really know how to do that. So I just grabbed this really old produce knife and just hacked and slashed my way through it the whole time. The end result I think was pretty good, but just be warned if you use corkboard in the future that it's going to dull all of your knives and everything that you use. And corkboard is really fierce, but it does look nice. I gotta give it that. The concept of this piece is a mountaintop ritual site that has been around for thousands of years. So because of that, I decided it would be best to fill in the gaps of the stairs because it wouldn't really look natural or like a mountaintop for them to just kind of be floating stairs. So I filled in the gap with some corkboard shavings and tinfoil. Next up, I mixed this beautifully named plaster of Paris with some water and nothing else. I looked all over the packaging for this plaster for kind of ratios of, plaster to water, and there was nothing. So I just played it by ear. And after I'd come up with that kind of really, honestly, it looks like pancake batter. But after the pancake batter was mixed up, I grabbed just a stick and started slathering it on there. Very, very liberally, as you can see. And, there's a shot of my pajamas and a big mess that I had created because every diorama I make inevitably results in me making a big mess like a big old baby. After the pancake diorama cake had dried, to kind of create more of a natural, look to everything, I just carved at it with a knife and glued down this plinth for some verticality. Now here's where I got real fancy, like super duper extra mega fancy. Not really. I wanted to make candles. I've always wanted to open an Etsy store, call it Gundamonium's Candles, and just sell candles, but I've never done it. So instead, I'm going to live vicariously through my diorama and put some candles on my diorama. I had no idea what I was doing here. All that I could think of was I need a bunch of little cylinders and a bunch of fake wicks. So I grabbed from my recycling a Gundam sprue that I had already used and just cut it up because that's tiny cylinders. I then cut the big cylinder in half because it's a destroyed altar, not like some sort of newish, newfangled, new age place of worship. It's been around for thousands of years. So naturally over time, as more cultures move in, some stuff breaks and they don't know how to fix it. Case in point, this one random column at the top of a mountain. And then of course, because I want half of it to look carved out of the stone and the other half to look natural, I glued down a bunch of styrofoam blocks and glued the column to the top and then glued some styrofoam shavings to the side. So I knew for this piece that I would really want half of the diorama to look like it's a natural mountain, like a natural cliff face. And for that, I would need bark. Now, because for the way that I am, the anxious mess that I am, I knew that I wouldn't be able to just pick up bark off the ground because I'd be afraid that someone would find me and yell at me. So I went to my local PetSmart and bought it there. I painted this mini up with some glossy white from Vallejo and their gold shifter to act as the focal point of the entire piece when it was done. The shifters are amazing. I highly recommend looking into them if you have the capital to do so. They're not that expensive, but they only, as far as I can tell, sell them in 5-packs, and the 5-packs can be quite pricey depending on where you find them. I then set about to tactically glue down all the spiky bits and gravestones and my cute little candles. Honestly, I really liked how the candles turned out. I had hoped that the PVA glue would look like dried wax at the bottom of them, but it didn't really turn out that way in the end result. But still, I don't know. They look like candles. I'm really happy with them. Next up, it was time to give everything a nice black prime and subsequently blow around everything that hadn't actually cured or been totally glued down yet. Yeah, a lot of dried plaster bits and corkboard bits got scattered all over my hobby room, and I will be finding them for the next 37 years. I gave the primer a full day to cure and properly dry before adding the first layers of paint. Because this is going to be a mountain, naturally, I started with gray. I think I start everything with gray at this point. Let me think about it. I started the alleyway with gray. I started the Imperial Guard dugout with gray. And yeah, now I'm starting this with gray. So a lot of gray. I tend to use a lot of gray. Coincidentally, when I was at the hobby store last, I didn't stock up on gray. I instead bought more black because I thought that was all I needed, but I'm probably going to run out of gray at this point. For the actual rock face, what I did was I grabbed some of my brown paint and mixed it in with the gray paint and then painted those rocks on that side with the brown mixture because I felt that stone that has been carved to shape will naturally probably have a much lighter gray tone because it's the inside of the rock. Whereas the outside stones are always facing the elements, or they have been for longer, so they'll have more of a weathered look to them. Painting the natural rock face was honestly way more fun because I could wet blend. I've never wet blended before. I understand that it's basically just blending the paint on the piece while it's still wet, but I've never done it. And because they're just rocks and they can be anything, I just wet blended them. And speaking of being wet, I wanted everything to look kind of like it was mossy and, you know, it had been rained on forever. So I got some of that green craft paint with some gray in it and just watered it down. Basically made it water and just dribbled it on everything. Well, not on everything. As we can see, I put it on the top so that it would dribble down to look naturally like water that had flowed over time, because that's what water does. It flows. Flows like water, like Bruce Lee said. Water flows. To add some contour, contrast, I think contour, because in this case I was going for depth rather than just weathering and depth, I guess. But yeah, to add contour, I grabbed my Army Painter washes, and as we can see, I just covered everything. Everything got a nice wet blend of dark Army Painter wash. Then the spiky bits got painted with this really crazy, what's it called? Shining bronze from Vallejo, and it looks like it's from outer space. And then to further add contour, I should open a makeup channel. But yeah, to further add contour, I grabbed some of my lightest, no, not my lightest, my most tan yellow, and dry brushed every surface, well, the top of every surface, so that, you know, it looked like just a patchy, dusty, patchy mess. And weathered the bronze with some patina. The gravestones actually got treated with some miniature paint because, I mean, they are from a miniature company, so why not treat them to some miniature paint? And I painted up the spooky skulls, also with miniature paint, your static white. and then further wash those down. And then I don't know if anyone remembers from earlier, because I didn't address it purposely, I made some pumpkins out of those 3 spheres that I had made and put them away for later. All right, here's me trying to get fancy again. I wanted the candles to look like they were actually glowing and giving off light. So I grabbed some yellow paint and put a very tiny amount of it into my airbrush, and then started airbrushing around the candles where I thought naturally light would hit, you know, everything that was around it. I wanted to add some variation, so I also made some blue lighting around some of the candles. I also want this piece to kind of look like a spell is in the process of happening. So I painted the rocks at a very extreme angle using my airbrush with green blue from Vallejo because it kind of looks magical. I think it's a magical looking color. I made sure to keep the diorama at kind of a 90-degree angle and just shoot upwards towards the base of where I was going to position the statue for later. Because it's autumn in real life, and it's obviously autumn in the diorama because it's spooky diorama, I stole some of my own oregano and parsley from my spice rack and just put down some PVA glue and sprinkled it down. There's some great benefits to this. It makes your diorama smell great. Well, if you like oregano, it makes your diorama smell great. It's really cheap. And also, when are you going to use the dried oregano that you bought 5 years ago when you made your family Christmas dinner? And the only reason you made Christmas dinner that year was because you had to, because everyone else couldn't. For I don't know what reason, but I had to buy a whole spice rack, and I don't even use anything from the spice rack. I also strategically placed some PVA glue to make it look like there were some mossy vines growing up the side of the mountain as well. This was not with spice though, that was just with regular Gale Force 9 mossy green. And then for some further variation, I picked out some of my favorite Vallejo tufts. And actually, these ones are gamer grass tufts, which are really, really nice. The gamer grass ones are so much cheaper, and they look just as good as everyone else's. I recommend them. Also, you can't really have any spooky season without spiders, because spiders are spooky. So what I like to do is grab some used fabric softener from my laundry. Well, I don't grab it from the laundry. I save it after I do my laundry, and I just watered it down with PVA glue and a lot of water and put it on. I then made sure to paint all the candles. I painted them some blood red and then just some pure white. After I was done painting the little spooky candles, I glued down the golden goddess and the adorable little jack-o'-lanterns and called it a night. If you've managed to make it all the way to this part of the video, I just want to wish everyone a very, very, very happy autumn. I hope that you have all of the best spiced lattes you can and a great Halloween. I love you all, and yeah, enjoy your autumn. See you later. Gundemonium out.